like it.
What are you doing? Oh, are you ready to be on the camera? Oh, are you?
So cute.
Are you?
Little turtle.
It's a little after 5 o'clock on a Tuesday, October 2nd. And Patty corrects me that it's like 6 o'clock now. And we're heading into the Bellevue Hospital to see Minnie. We are walking into the building now. We have not seen Minnie yet. And James and Tiffany do not know that we're here yet. And I realize that I said it's October 2nd, but it's really October 3rd. Waiting. And we're gonna come in. And hopefully it's the right one. And there they are. And we have Tiffany, Dawn, and James, and baby Minnie.
Told you this would happen, Minnie.
Eyes wide open.
Yeah.
And excited that
Grandpa.
Grandpa's here.
Yeah.
Hi guys. So Natalie here is a little bit conked out. She has like, her belly hurts today. So she's sitting on my nursing pillow so she can pull her feet up under her and her belly doesn't have to touch anything. So poor girl. But yeah,
that's
her.
at least what we think the problem is.
True.
She doesn't speak. She only cries or whines. So we just speculate.
But yeah, so today we figured we'd tell you the story of her birth, which was basically everything I did not want in a birth, but it ended up being really beautiful and really special. So, okay, I wanted James to be here because he was there like for all of it, and he can help tell the story and tell you how amazing I was with the pain.
You did a really good job, sweetie. I was very impressed.
Oh my gosh, I did not feel amazing. So we took this 8-week birth class because I've been terrified to give birth since I saw my mom give birth to my littlest sister. I was like almost 12.
Hashtag mistake.
Yeah, and I was like, oh my gosh, my mom's a tough cookie. Like, she runs marathons. And I was like, she like sounds like she's in so much pain. There's no way I could ever give birth. So I've been terrified of giving birth my whole life, basically. And so when we got pregnant, we decided to do this 8-week birth class together, which was so empowering and amazing. And I ended up being like, I kind of can't wait to give birth now. And I wanted like a non-medicated birth because I'm terrified of taking new meds because I have like reactions to so many things. And I like never take meds because of that, and I didn't want any. So I wanted non-medicated. I did not want to be induced because I had heard in our birth class that that was like really painful. And I wanted to be able to have labor in the water, like in a hot tub. Those are the 3 things I wanted. None of those things happened.
So Minnie, now named Natalie Taylor, was due on September 23rd. Mm-hmm. And I kind of thought that maybe since she was Tiffany's child and Tiffany is very punctual, that maybe she would arrive on September 23rd. Well, September 3rd came and went, but Tiffany was not freaked out because she said, you know, I'm absolutely positive that I'm going to go into labor a week later on September 30th, and the baby will be born on October 1st.
I was so convinced.
So that whole week, Tiffany was very chill. Yep, Sunday's the day. Sunday afternoon came. There were no contractions. There was no labor.
I was like, what's happening?
Tiffany was freaking out.
I was freaking out.
So we took her out to dinner. We took her out to dessert. And that next day, she had an ultrasound and a stress test because anytime a baby is overdue, the doctors want to make sure that the baby's still doing okay.
She was like a week overdue at that point. And I woke up that morning having some contractions. Like, they were like 15, 20 minutes apart, which is, you know, very early labor. But I was like, yes, maybe she's really going to come today. October 1st, she can still be born today. So then I went into the doctor's office and they did an ultrasound and they were like, your amniotic fluid level is really low. And it's like, so the amniotic fluid level is important so that the baby can tolerate the contractions. And also it's a sign, if it's getting low, it's a sign that the placenta, which brings oxygen to the baby, the placenta is aging. Mm-hmm. So they were pretty concerned about that. And apparently like one of the main doctors like sat down with the midwives and were like, we want to induce her today and have this baby today, like send her to the hospital now. And I was like crying because I'm like, I don't want that to happen. So they did this exam and found out that I was like almost 100% effaced. So basically your cervix has to like thin out. So it's like paper thin, and that happens before you start dilating or your cervix starts opening into the birth canal. For a first-time mom, effacement happens before. So it was like already mostly effaced, and I was already like 2 or 3 centimeters dilated. You're supposed to dilate 10 centimeters. So they're like, okay, well, let's send you home, see what happens tonight. If you don't go into labor tonight, we'll have to induce you tomorrow just to make sure the baby's safe. So I was like freaking out. I was like crying in the office and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. I don't want to be induced. Like, please no. So I came home and that night, contractions started to get more intense.
Yeah, it was like every 5 to 7 minutes. So we were up all night together, like watching TV. And then when the pain would get really intense, Tiffany would get in the shower. And then about 4 a.m.
The hot water helps so much.
Yeah, about 4 a.m. I kind of passed out. And Tiffany tried to get some sleep, but she couldn't because the contractions would kind of wake her up.
And like laying down, they were so much worse than like being on our exercise ball or in the shower or in the bath. And so like laying down when they'd come, it was like so painful. So I was like basically pulled an all-nighter that night. And in the morning, they'd started like kind of getting really weird. So instead of like, they're supposed to keep progressing. And our midwife said once they get to like 5 minutes apart, consistently for an hour, then go to the hospital because you don't want to go too early. So the contractions, instead of speeding up, they were at like 5 minutes apart for a while, and then they started being like 12 minutes apart, and then 3 minutes apart, and then 15 minutes apart, and just really irregular, and they were just really painful. So in the morning, we called over to our midwives and we're like, do we go into the hospital? Do we not? So they had us come in and they were like, basically, you're so tired right now, like you couldn't handle a splinter. Like the pain's just gonna be really hard. And we really need to get this baby out of you because your amniotic fluid levels are really low. And so they were like...
Yeah, and you had dilated by this point to 4 centimeters.
Right, so it like was only another centimeter after the whole night of contractions. And I was like kind of discouraged by that. So they're like, let's have you go into the birthing center. And because we did it at not the hospital, but the birthing center, which was really nice. So they're like, let's have you go in there and we'll have you take morphine and Phenergan. And I'm like, I've never had either of those medicines. So already I'm like, I didn't want medications because I'm nervous about it. And now here we are. But they're like, it'll help you just be able to like rest a little more between contractions for a few hours so you have strength to like keep going. So we went into the hospital at like 9 a.m.
It was closer to 10 a.m., but they didn't actually start the morphine until between 12 and 1. So that afternoon, Tiffany was sort of like sleeping, and she would have contractions, but then she would fall like right back asleep. So she was able to kind of rest up.
And I still couldn't lay down because they were so painful. So I sat on an exercise ball, put my arms on the bed, and like laid my hands on my arms. So that was for like 3 hours. And then my midwife came in, and this was so cool actually. The midwife on call that day was the same midwife who delivered my younger siblings and his youngest sister. And so it was so special to have her there. I love her. And she's retiring in like 3 weeks. So it was like super special that she delivered our baby too. But that was really cool. So she came in and she's like, okay, at this point, like it's 24 hours later, we need to get this going. We're going to not induce anymore because my labor had started, but augment it with the Pitocin. And I was like, oh my gosh, another thing I didn't want my labor, like they're gonna augment it, it's gonna be so painful. So they started the Pitocin. And
which you sort of, apparently the method is they start you with a little and then they give you more and more and more till your contractions start happening just so basically automatically.
Yeah, and apparently it usually takes a little while for it to kick in, and they usually have to not ratchet it up to like 20 units or whatever before contractions start. But for me, at 4, contractions started really intense, and it started like almost immediately, and I threw up like almost immediately. And so then it just was like pretty intense. They were like 3 minutes apart for like 3 or 4 hours, and they hurt a lot. And I couldn't go in the water because the monitoring, they had to constantly monitor the baby because I was on the IV Pitocin, and so I couldn't, their monitors couldn't get wet, so I couldn't labor in the water, which was the other thing I really wanted. And so I was like, oh, and plus the water at home had like really helped me tolerate the contractions, and without it they were just so much more painful. So it was just pretty intense. This is where you can tell them how amazing I was.
Tiffany did a really, really good job with dealing with the pain, breathing through the contractions, changing positions. She did a great job. And so she was probably laboring for like 3 or 4 hours.
I think it was like midnight by the time they checked me again. And by the time I was shaking uncontrollably. They were like, had been 3 minutes apart for a while. They were really intense. Like I'd thrown up already. So I was like, I must be in transition where you're getting ready to push, like 8-9 centimeters dilated. And so they checked me and I was like 4.5 centimeters dilated. So I'd been in labor for like 36 hours and I was like 4.5 centimeters dilated. And I was at that point, I was like, I cannot do this anymore. Like, I'm so tired. I've been awake for this long and I like can't handle it. So I was like, give me a freaking epidural. I don't even care anymore. And so the anesthesiologist came in and I told him, like, listen, my body is so sensitive to everything. I had my wisdom teeth out, I had anesthesia for it, and I don't remember 3 days of my life afterwards. I want to remember this birth, so please give me, like, the lowest dose. And they were awesome. The staff were so amazing. So he gave me, like, a real low dose, and then the nurse just, like, bumped it up a few notches until I felt like it was where I wanted it to be. And so then we both, like, went to sleep. I was, like, in and out of sleep a little bit for, like, 3 hours.
Yeah.
And my body just like totally relaxed because of the epidural. And so they came in to check me again. And in those 3 hours, I'd gone to like 9 centimeters dilated. And so they're like, oh, we're almost ready to push. And I think like an hour later, they came in to push and they let it like wear off a little bit so I could feel the contractions, but it wasn't super painful. And so I got to start pushing and I could feel the contractions, so I knew when to push. And it was like, the pushing was like the most amazing experience. Like, it was so cool. And so they brought a mirror over so I could like watch her head coming out. Like, and James actually caught her and cut the cord.
I almost missed though, because she came out so fast. We like seeing more and more and more of her head. And then all of a sudden they're like, get ready. And so I got my hands out just in time to get
She
you
like just came right out. Like, it was like her head and then whole baby, like in the push. It was crazy. But it was like, my body was so relaxed that it like was just amazing. And like, it was, I don't know, pushing was like the most miraculous, incredible, amazing experience. I loved it. It was funny because like walking into the birthing center in the beginning, I was like, we're adopting the rest of our children. And then when I got the epidural, I was like, oh, I could do this again. So yeah, so she came out and it was so special. And by that time I was so tired. I'd been awake like 48 hours almost at that point. And I was just like complete zombie. And so I'm like, I want to like be more aware of her and like remember this, but I'm like in and out of consciousness, like holding her and like, I don't know, I just felt like a total zombie. So we did skin to skin, me and Natalie, for like an hour, and then she did skin to skin with James, and my parents came and my dad got to help weigh her and measure her. And then eventually they went to get me up to like go to the recovery rooms, and the nurse like helped me walk into the bathroom, and she's holding me up, and I was like, I'm starting to not feel good. So James is like, how about I bring the wheelchair over? And I was like, you might want to hurry up because I'm gonna pass out. And next thing I knew, I'm like in the wheelchair and I come to and I'm like wet and I smell bad, and I realized like I passed out and vomited all over myself.
Yeah, I think it was just
fun.
the epidural wearing off.
Yeah, I think so. So yeah, that's our birth story. It wasn't anything that I would have said I wanted, but I loved pushing her out. Like, it was the most amazing experience. Probably one of the most amazing experiences of my life. So it was really cool.
And welcome to Bellevue Hospital. It's been 2.5 hours since Minnie has been born. She's taken a nap, and we are now getting to have Mom and Dad eat their breakfast and rejuvenate themselves after a night-long episode.
2 nights.
Whoa, 2 nights of getting ready for Minnie. We'll talk to you later, and hope you all have as fabulous of a day as we are having right now. Say goodbye. And there you go.
We have
The
a
end.
baby! Perfect.